And for more on the current conditions, we're joined now by Chief Economist at Efficient Group, Dawie Roodt. A very good evening to you, Dawie. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Let's just first start with what was said by the Minister in the Presidency, that the government is concerned about the impact that power outages is having on the economy, particularly the second quarter figures. We know that Statistics South Africa is going to release the data for the 3-month period. The predictions are 1 percentage point that will be lost. What are your predictions? Is this accurate?
Yes, indeed, that's what I expect. But I think it's important that we just have to understand, I'm going to be a little bit technical here, is that what we are going to do in the second quarter, we're going to compare the second quarter to the first quarter. And then we do all sort of statistical magic to get to the so-called quarter-on-quarter annualized figure that's also been adjusted for inflation. So that's basically what we're trying to calculate. What is the underlying growth momentum of the economy? And there are many factors that can affect this. Like, for example, if the first quarter was a very good quarter, as an example, quite often what happens, the second quarter will look quite bad simply because the first quarter was much stronger. But putting all these things together, then yes, I expect the economy to have contracted at about roughly 1%, 0.5% to 1% or so. But also keep in mind that Statistics South Africa will make some adjustments to the first quarter as well. So this is kind of like a moving target. But the underlying economic growth in South Africa, without a doubt, took quite a knock in the second quarter.
We've already spoken about the load shedding that we've experienced and how the Minister said we don't know how it's impacted the economy. But I think for many observers, it's been obvious. This is why so many people have lamented this. So we've mentioned the fact that government is looking to create jobs in manufacturing and agriculture. I'd imagine that these sectors would have been impacted heavily during this period. Just how bad would it be?
Yeah, I'm particularly concerned about manufacturing, because if you go back 30 years ago, manufacturing was the biggest sector in the South African economy. And today it's somewhere like number 5 or so. And manufacture is very important because manufacture is that industry where you can potentially create a lot of jobs. Of course, you always need skilled people, but you don't need very, very highly skilled people necessarily in the manufacturing industry. So that sector has simply we've been disinvesting in the manufacturing for the last couple of years. The strongest sectors in South Africa are the advanced sectors, like, for example, finance. Finance is very much a stronger sector in the economy. And then a couple of other sectors, like, for example, retail and so on. Those are also relatively important sectors. But I think, you refer to job creation. I really believe that is the wrong approach. When we talk about economic growth, we have to focus on economic growth and not on job creation. In fact, I am very much against policies that's supposed to promote job creation. And the reason why I say so is simply because if you try to promote job creation, then you quite often do the wrong things. You implement the wrong kind of policies. And in the end, it's economic growth that suffers. And that's only one real source of job creation, and that is economic growth. So I would suggest that we forget about job creation and put all focus on economic growth, and jobs will follow. We can go through the history of South Africa in the early 90s when the economy is doing, or the early 2000s when the economy is doing very well. We created a lot of jobs. Now, with the economy growing at 1.5%, 2% or so, we are not creating enough jobs. And the reason why is because we have a government that's trying to fine-tune the economy and start with all sort of job creation projects and youth creation projects and that sort of stuff. Forget about that and get confidence back in the economy and grow the economy, and jobs will happen.
There are those who are critical of a lack of social compact, but the question is, do we have, just in terms of the economic infrastructure, the institutions to provide the wherewithal for this, and are they performing? We can talk ad nauseum about the problems, as you say, as per your view, that job creation is the wrong way to go, or to focusing on it. Given the fact that we have internal and external shocks, some of those internal shocks of our own making, do we have the requisite institutions to tackle adequately
Yes.
some of these challenges?
No, without a doubt, we have those institutions. Unfortunately, many of these institutions have been well mismanaged and really damaged. You made a comment about the social pact. Actually, we have a social pact in South Africa. And the social pact is what it comes down to is that you have the private sector and you have government, and there's an agreement whereby government will look after the private sector and the private or look after the people. So if you want to use that term, and the people then fund government to pay taxes. Now, if you look at the social pact in South Africa, that has been broken, and it has been broken by government. And government has broken this because of things like, for example, state capture. They've broken it because they've broken Eskom, as an example. They've undermined the police, as an example. They all the wrong macroeconomic policies. So the social pact is being undermined by exactly this same government. The president, by the way, the beginning of this year, he said in 100 days' time, we will have a new social pact in South Africa. No, I think it's 300 days now, and we still don't have this agreement between the various role players in South Africa. The institutions are there. They've been destroyed in some instances. They are mismanaged in many instances. And quite often, in most instances, it is because of government's mismanagement of those institutions. The one or two institutions that still work very well. The Reserve Bank is doing an excellent job. The courts in South Africa are still independent, not very efficient, but still independent. But in the meantime, the institution of private property rights, as an example, is currently being undermined. The institution of free trade, as an example, is being undermined by fixing all sort of prices and things like that. So in most instances, the things that we are experiencing at the moment that's undermining the economy is because a government that has broken the social compact or the social pact.
I want to talk about the South African Revenue Service as a tool or an enforcer of such a social contract. There has been, obviously, in recent times, some criticism of how it operates or should operate. I'd like to hear your point of view and how we use the money that we're able to collect from such an institution.
Yeah, well, SARS, and I was a speaker at the Tax Indaba this morning. SARS is actually doing quite a relatively good job under circumstances. We know that SARS was also part of the so-called state capture issues that we've experienced, but they came out of it not completely destroyed, certainly damaged, but not completely destroyed. SARS is in a very, very difficult position, and because SARS is an instrument of government and they collect money. People do not want to pay taxes, and there are various reasons why people don't want to pay taxes, but very importantly, people don't want to pay taxes because the perception, and quite often correctly so, is that the money is simply mismanaged. And that's the dilemma of SARS, and that is why SARS is trying to sort of put a distance between themselves and the rest of government. But the reality is they are actually part of government. SARS is doing a relatively good job under difficult circumstances, but that's not where the issue is. The issue is with the efficiency of state spending. That is where the main issue is. We need to fix that, because one of the biggest obstacles for SARS today is people don't want to pay taxes because the social contract, what we've been referring to, has been broken.
Dawie, just a quick one before we run out.
Many other criticism as well that we can levy against the tax system in South Africa. It is rather complicated. It is quite progressive. We ran out of taxpayers. Many taxpayers are emigrating. If the economy is not growing, you're not going to collect money because that's where the money comes from. But the institution SARS, under Kieswetter, I think he's doing a relatively good job.
Okay.
And slowly, that institution is getting back on its feet again.
We are running out of time, and I need to get to this question.
But they're really fighting an uphill battle because they've got the mismanagement of state funds on the one hand, and they've got taxpayers that are very, very reluctant to pay taxes and keep on funding a government that is quite often seen as being totally inefficient and even corrupt.
All right. Dawie, I am hoping that you can hear me now, because I'm saying we have run out of time, but I do need to ask about the fuel price coming down. 2 Rand is obviously a huge cut, but how long will that take to kick in that relief back into the economy? Dawie, can you hear us?
My apologies. I just had a bit of a technical issue here. I can hear you, yes.
Okay, so I was saying to you, this relief of a R2 cut in the price of fuel, how long will it take to help recovery in the economy, and which sectors do you foresee benefiting from it?
Yeah, very important. Of course, we will see that the inflation data will immediately improve because of this. But, you know, economics is not a one-to-one kind of thing. So if there's an increase in the petrol price tonight, it doesn't mean all other prices will increase tomorrow or vice versa. Because sometimes it can take up to 2 years for a price change to work its way through the economy. So don't expect suddenly that things will become cheaper because the petrol prices come down, because we're still trying to, the effect of previous petrol price increases is still working its way through the economy. But certainly, R2 per litre, it's quite a significant fall in the petrol price. Like I've said, it will be reflected in the inflation numbers as an example. The Reserve Bank will probably sit on their hands a little bit longer or increase interest rates a little bit less. And especially people that the man on the street that is really experiencing a lot of economic hardship at the moment, that will come as a bit of a relief. But don't see too much in that. We've gone through a period of significant price increases, especially on energy and on food. And those prices are still underlyingly, those prices are still significantly higher than where they were, say, for example, a year or so ago. Good news, but don't expect miracles from it.
All right. Thank you so much for your time and insights. Chief Economist at the Efficient Group, Dawie Roodt.